Welcome to the Beauties and Beasties podcast with Alex and Sean.
That was very exciting, wasn't it?
The technology is phenomenal. It's nuts. We can do banners and everything now. We can bring people's comments up. So this is all good. So hi everyone, welcome to the Beauties and Beasties podcast. And we're already people already joining. So that's fantastic. So just drop a comment. There we go. Great intro. Thanks very much, Clive. It works. It's all coming together. So yes, as ever, it's Sean and I with the Beauties and Beasties podcast. And this week we have two very special guests, not just the one, double the trouble. We have Matt and we have Alan. So do you guys want to introduce yourself? Let's go in alphabetical order first. So Alan, tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Alan from AAA Mole Control. One of the second best mole catchers in the country. Being Matthew first. So, yeah, we're into the winter season now, full time into the moles. We've got a lot more important things to be doing than being interviewed. Need to get my traps cleaned out.
Well, thank you very much for giving us a couple of hours of your time. We'll try and keep it as brief as possible. But thank you very much. Thanks, Alan. Matt, how are you doing?
Evening, guys. Not too bad.
Excellent stuff. So yeah, how long have you guys been mole catchers then? Do you call yourself? Do you consider yourself to be pest controllers first and mole catchers second, or are you mole catchers first and pest controllers second? I mean, what is it? What's your label?
No, mole catching first for me.
Yeah, I used to be mole catchers first, but it's spun completely around now. So whereas before mole catching used to take up 90% of my work, now it's probably touching 20% of it.
Really? Okay. Is that just a time thing, or have you just diversified onto? Sorry, my dog's decided to join us in here. But have you just decided to diversify out? Is it just more things are interesting you? So what happened there?
Yeah, I think that's just where I started. So I trapped my first mole when I was 15, and then I think it was 2014 I went self-employed and started doing it on the side against my other job, and then we just went full time into it then right the way through, and you just can't keep catching them. I said this to Alan when he started. We've just done so many places now, so many times. It just dwindles down and down and down, and unless you push yourself out further afield, the work just naturally tails off. And we've been pushing the pest control, and we've just been so busy with that now. We've got staff on board, and probably I think we got 80 to 85 contracts that we got to get around on the day-to-day stuff. So the mole work is still a good part of our job, but it's just not up in front like it used to be. It's not the main thing.
Okay.
How did you get into mole control, Alan?
Sorry?
How did you get into mole control?
Well, my mole control started through Matthew. I've always enjoyed catching moles and trying my hardest, and like being an amateur on moles, you're struggling to catch them, and then Matthew come up and we went in my field. I was living on a farm, and we went in the field, and he showed me the basics of how to catch the mole, and we caught the mole the same day, and it all started from there.
Sean?
How did it? Yeah, sorry. I was just trying to sort that annoying echo thing out. I don't know if it was mine. How did you two come into contact with one another then?
He bought an horse off me. I wish he'd never come for that horse.
If I could go back now.
Yeah, he come to buy a horse off me, and I was going out shooting one night, and he was working in the office where the wife was working, and he asked to go out shooting. So we went out and had night shooting, and we just met from there. We just stuck to each other.
Yeah, it was still on forum, wasn't it? Hunting life.
Yeah.
Remember that thing?
Yeah.
Before.
Well, I never used to go on it. It was the wife.
It sounds very much like a fairy tale, doesn't it? You know, we met over a horse, and then we went
Yeah,
out night
yeah,
shooting, and we shared a little tot from the hip flask, and from there, yeah, that is Disney level. You know, if Disney did pest control,
yeah.
I think that would be absolutely it. So no,
I
I've
have,
got
I have got a little video on YouTube explaining, I mean, what, my life, what it was going over, working for minimum wage jobs, being disrespected at work. And there's a little story on there I was talking about how it came to all round for me to go self-employed and, being my own boss.
Okay, so I mean, we can't bring that up right now. We can try to. So give us a little bit of a rundown about that. What was the give us the highs and the lows of that.
In what side? What do you want to know the highs and lows of?
Well, just pick one. I haven't seen it. You know, what was the high points, the low points to the journey you took?
Well, I had a lad from called Moocher's Guide that was on. He was doing YouTube video, and the same again. He was interested in what was going on with the mole catching and what started it, and so I just did a little talk of what was going on. Disrespect, and Matthew teaching me the basics of mole catching, and it just turned my whole world around.
Oh, so yeah, so someone's said there, and I think this brings that in fully, which was, the competition. Is there a competition between the pair of you? Do you keep score?
No. I know.
There's never.
I'm a lot older than him.
So you're saying on aggregate, you are doing better.
Yeah, well, when we're together, when I'm really busy with work and Matthew comes down and helps me, we can cover so many farms. In them 3 days of him being there, we do stupid amount of work. Well, I run 700 traps. We'll empty that truck in 2.5 days.
So that truck.
My truck with all my mole traps in. So, there's around 700 traps in there, and we can empty that within 2.5 days, totally empty the truck.
So
what kind of square footage?
A lot of acreage. Some of my farms I do down here are 4,000 acres each.
hang on a second. Is that any better? No.
That was considerably worse.
Do us a favour, lads. The screen. Click on that and click on audio.
So hang on, Sean. If you and I talk now, just here we go.
Yeah.
So we'll just figure out by process elimination who is the echo. Not us. So
Not us.
with that, not us. Matt, can you say something?
Yeah, go on. Is it me?
No, it's not you. This is like the worst game of roulette going, isn't it? Right. Alan by process elimination.
Can you hear me?
Alan, I think it's you.
Okay.
Go on mute. I'll grab your.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, Alan, if you just tap unmute when we want to talk to you. I'm so sorry about that, but it sounds as though we're just picking up some kind of reverb from you there.
I tell you what,
so yes,
Alan. Hang on a second. It may be that you're just a bit too close to your mic, or maybe turn your mic settings down so it's not as loud, and you might find that sorts it for you.
So to take this, we kind of heard how you got into mole catching, but Matt, one of the questions I'd like to ask, because I always believed before I knew more about moles that working in the farming community, there always used to be a saying that you can tell when winter's coming because the moles go deep, they go below the frost line. And so you'd imagine therefore that winter would not in fact be your busiest time of year because the moles would be going deeper. But of course that's not the case. Every mole catcher I talk to says that this time of year is by far and away the busiest time of year for you. So why is that?
It's definitely the other way around to that. I think in the summertime, well, we don't get much summers anymore, but it goes dry, the worms go deep, and I think the moles tend to follow them. So you can look at a field that's covered in moles right throughout the winter time. As it comes to the summertime, you watch it, just the activity just drops right off. So they're moving back to the hedgerows and in the forestries and stuff where there's little worms and grubs, and they're following the worms down deeper too.
They're following they're following the worms, but the worms are therefore following the moisture. So with that, you're moving to the hedgerows because they're looking for I'd imagine the damper, more conducive place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Now the mic's down.
So yeah, try again.
Is that a bit better now? The microphone's turned down.
No,
it's better when you talk. It's not so great. When you talk.
Okay, I'm going to put headphones in. Hang on.
Okay, yeah, I've had to do exactly the same. I am wearing the proverbial doggy collar of shame with my big earmuffs on there.
So a bit of disclosure here. I went on a course with Alan. Alan's listening. I think I was the first person ever to do a course with you, wasn't I? I think I was, yeah. So, and I'm sure you'll get to mention this in his shameless plug, but when you go with Alan, you'll spend 2 days. The first day is just, there's no classroom, there's no health and safety theory, blah, blah, blah. You are on the job. From the first moment you get there till the day you leave, you're there. And you start setting traps. And what he was saying about these two lads here is, and I'd love one of you to explain it, how you can turn moles into a commercial venture, because most people will catch 1 or 2 moles, 3 moles, 5 moles, but there's a handful of lads around the country who can catch 150 moles in 24 hours, and there's an art to it. So how did you, 1, find out about that art, and 2, turn it into that? Well, obviously Alan sort of learned it from Matthew, but how did you find out about that art, and how did you turn it into a commercial, viable arm to your business, and in your case, just a business on its own?
So if it was Matt first, because I'm just in sequence muting and unmuting people, you might notice there. So if we go to you first, Matt, then I'll just knock everyone else off.
Yeah, so like I said, it's not rocket science catching moles. Most people can go out and catch 1 or 2 moles, but when you need to turn it into a business that's viable, and you need to go onto a farm and you need to smash it out, and like Sean said, catching 150, 200 in a short period of time, it just comes down to practice. I was okay at it. I remember setting my first mole trap. I set it upside down. I was putting clods on top. I had backfill after backfill, and I didn't have a clue. I was 15 back then, and I just stuck at it, and I realised, okay, that's what it's got to be. And then I was catching well, and I actually went on a kill gym course with Steve Gould. I was very keen. I turned up a week early for the course. So I had to go home and then travel back up again. And yeah, just little hints and tips from there, which gave me a bit more confidence, really. And then from that, I went out knocking doors, posting flyers, putting little signs up around, getting more and more work. I was getting faster and quicker as I was doing it, until the point where we're at now. And then I showed Alan how to do it. He had a lot of moles up there with him. I'd come down here, I'd do my work, and then I'd fly up there, and me and Alan would go at it for 3-4 days, come back down here. So it was just 7 days a week, non-stop, just trapping. And that's just what gets you to where you are. And then you just learn to naturally read. So we're flying around on a quad bike, normally up on one knee, looking around everywhere. Before that bike's even stopped, I know in my head where I'm putting that trap. I'm looking at the hedge lines. Oh, I can see him coming out of the hedge line. Yeah, there's his feeding ground. This is where I want to be. Trap in, one trap, away you go after the next one.
I mean, I've got a couple of things from that I just want to dig a little further into. One, and you have to tell us, what was the trap that you set upside down? Because I mean, most of them are relatively intuitive. So what was it that you set upside down? Oh, please don't tell me it was a half. That would have yeeted the mole out of that hole like a trebuchet.
I think it was out of the ground by the time I went to pick it up. Anyway, it just made a big mole thump out of it. And my first ever mole I caught was actually in a scissor trap.
Oh,
but
really?
things now.
I was about to say, I always tell people to avoid them, and in fact, weirdly enough, so most of the people, so as I was saying before, to just on the backstage bit, I actually run a little introduction to mole course, and it is an introduction to moles, not anything close to what you guys do, but it is just letting people know what the different traps are and the rest of it. But we've had more people come onto that course who are groundskeepers who are fed up of amateur mole catchers using scissor traps, because they'll just leave the scissor traps in silly places, and it absolutely ruins their ride-on lawnmowers and their other equipment, as they just go over these things like little landmines, and it gets dragged up onto the inside of the machine. So that's number one. Number two, and either of you guys just jump in with this. We always think of the mole as being a solitary animal, don't we? They're solitary animals, and they have a relatively low fecundity. They go into season only a couple of times a year, and they don't have particularly big litters. So how do we get to the point where there is 150 moles in a relatively small geographical area? I mean, what's going on there?
I think it's just from no control over a period of years. I mean, I think there are 4 or 5 in a litter. So yeah, I think it's just no control over a period of years. Obviously, years ago we had strychnine, and that would just keep killing 7 times on. So that used to have a massive effect on it. Once that got banned, a lot of people couldn't trap moles. It was a pretty much like a secret business back then. It didn't have any YouTube and people like Alan doing courses where you can go and learn it. Everyone kept their secrets close to them. And nobody really taught anyone anything. So I think, yeah, that's what contributed to these places just getting overrun with them.
Just to put it into context, you have to understand these lads aren't working small areas for 150.
No,
Yeah, they are working massive acreages. They're just traveling at speed. Like, to watch them is, I don't know. I think it takes Alan give her a nod, Alan. It's about 10 seconds to put a trap in the floor, doesn't it? Set from start to finish. Getting off the bike, getting back on, 10 seconds, and it's one mole, one trap. So if you think there's one mole there, you get one trap. You don't get two.
Is this still muting? Is this still going mad with me now?
So yeah, you're unmuted now. But everyone else is.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, the thing is as well with the mole catching courses, like Sean, you've been on the course. It's the hardest thing in the world to do is to train people to stop and look at a run and explain everything about that run when we don't look at runs. It's just like Matthew says, it's just a natural thing. So you're riding on your bike, you spotted the run 25 yards before you've got to it. The bike's still rolling when you're off to put the trap in.
I mean that absolutely bamboozles me as to how quick you can do that. And as you say, if the bike's still rolling while you're going on and off, that's just incredible.
Yeah, but yeah. So the other thing is, who came up with the spade design out to use too?
Yeah.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you now. Yes.
Is it spluttering?
It's not.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yes.
I'll have your headphones on.
Yeah.
You can join the cool club.
Yeah. Who came up with the spade design?
Who came up with the headphones?
No, spade.
It's still breaking up. It is when you're speaking.
That was Alan who came up with the spade design. So Alan's I'm that type of person. I use tunnel traps, a normal spade, a normal probe, and that's me. I don't use anything else. I might use patangs on like highly populated fields, football fields and parks and stuff, and Alan likes to change things. So he made that spade. I took the mick out of him for a while. He gets on with it. I still put a trap in with mine. So I don't see the point of changing what works, and Alan likes to fiddle around and make his own things, put all different traps in.
You're going to have to forgive me here because I have no idea what you're talking about. What is this spade? What is this magical spade you're talking of?
I
I would have brought it down if I would have known that you wanted to see it.
You've got a magic spade. Of
Come
course, I
on,
want to see it.
come on, Sean, save the day.
No, he's just that's it. He's just gone. He's had enough. He's off.
That's it.
He's just walking away. But
Yeah,
it's mad. I mean, it's such a unreal scale the way that you guys work compared to the way that I have seen moles being done. It just seems like a completely different scale. And Matt, it was really interesting to hear you talk about the intuition that you get. You drive along, you can understand what the oh my, oh my, that's. Can you still call that a spade? I mean, can we still call that a spade? Is that a spade anymore? But I imagine having a look at it, yeah, it's half and half. So basically, I imagine what you do, you go down and then turn it 180 and down, and then the sod that you pull out of the top is exactly the size you need.
yeah.
That's remarkable. That is. You know what that reminds me of? Okay, and I am going to show just how wildly sad I am. I have really recently got into watching people do turf repair on golf courses. And it's nuts because they have spades and tools like that where they can cut out really sort of like precise, perfect sections of
Yeah.
turf. And that looks exactly like that because, of course, you just plonk it and 180 it and plonk it, and it's exactly the size that you need.
Yeah, I
can see
can't
why
live
that's
without it.
Can you not?
I cannot live without it. Here's my original.
That has seen some love. Christ on a
Well,
pike.
it was probably, I would say 4 inches longer than what it is.
Oh, just
So
is that just from years of bashing in the heads of moles, or just
that's
just
that's
from
the
wear and
work
tear?
tool.
The work tool.
So,
Here's the lean.
Thank you.
but if I take this to that, because it's quite important, isn't it? The number one problem that people have with moles is that they get backfills, they don't catch.
Yeah,
And then that is compounded by the fact that there is a lot of myths going around about mole catching, which
Yeah.
are absolutely 110% untrue, but are still taught on mole catching courses today. So would you run
Yeah.
through some of those myths and why they're not true and why people are failing with them?
Well, they go on about scents, don't they? You've got to bury your traps for 2 weeks in the ground. You've got to wear gloves. You can't do all these different things where the scent's involved. But I get a trap out of the bag. It's in the ground, and they've got solvent on them. Some of them come really with a lot of solvent on them. We put them in the ground and catch everything with them. So I like to tune a lot of my traps. I mean, I bought a brand new one out of the bag because once the triggers are bent in, you get a lot of play in the triggers on the trap. I like to squeeze the signs in them to stop the play and bend the triggers so I can get 2 fingers in between the loop and the catch loop, which that's telling me it's going to hit the mole right round the rib cage. There's no tweaking needs doing on the triggers. They're lovely and smooth, and that's brand new out the bag.
That's the bits that I love because that's the bushcraft element of what we do, really, isn't it? You can take a trap out of the bag, and you're absolutely right. You can take a trap out of the bag and it'll work. But it is, I almost swore at everyone there. It's that little bit of extra knowledge, isn't it? That if you want a clean kill or if you want an effective kill, that's where the trigger needs to be. And I think it's those bits of information that you don't necessarily find in a book that very sadly it tends to be passed on. It's like that oral tradition. It's that word of mouth from person to person that we're in real risk of actually losing if we don't communicate and do things like this.
So obviously, Alan, Matthew taught you, so he showed you about fresh traps and why you're getting backfills. Who taught you about fresh traps? Who dispelled the myths for you, Matthew?
Is that to me or Matthew?
That was for me. It was probably Steve Gould on the Kill Germ one. He said to me, the old mole catchers, people used to come up and they say, how do I catch moles? And he'd say, right, you've got to go and bury your traps for 2 weeks, get the scent off them. He said, and in that time, that old mole catcher would go and do that job for you and take the work. And that's where it all comes from. And going back to scent, there was a mate of mine tipped a gallon of diesel over all my traps in the back of my Land Rover once, and I thought that was the end of it. And I put them in and they all still caught.
It's
Yeah.
like any animal, though, isn't it? We look at rats, we look at mice, we look at probably not insects. They're a little bit more mechanical and predictable in their nature. But certainly, you find some rats that will happily stumble onto a snap trap fresh out of the box, fresh out of the factory, and others. It has to be, well, they won't go into a box unless it's been thoroughly descented. All of these, things have a grain of truth to them, but ultimately there will be animals that are just going to engage regardless. So there we go. Someone's mentioned, and I have to.
I was going to say, to be fair, if you go with these two guys, they won't just sell that with moles, won't you? I'm going to say that there's moles that smell it and that. Yous will literally catch every mole, won't you, on a fresh trap? Like if you go on the course with these, and it's too long to go into now, but if you go down and trap with these guys, they are uber accurate. And would I be right in saying that neither of yous would be worried about a mole smell in any trap, any mole smell in any trap? It is the application, the way it's set, and where it's set, isn't it? It just comes down to placement and accuracy, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go on, Matt.
Moles are mostly stay in the hedgerows, and they normally come out the hedgerows, and you have a little run to come out the hedgerow into a feeding ground. Normally a little connector run off that into another feeding ground. But when that mole's waking up in that hedgerow and he gets into that first little run, he's still half asleep. He's only got two things on his mind. He's got sex if he's a man. And he comes out, and then as soon as he goes through that little tunnel and gets into that feeding ground, then his little tail sticks up, the hairs comes up, his nose starts twitching, and all his senses switch on, and he's hunting for worms. So the place to catch him is a hedgerow when he's nice and sleepy and he's not aware, and bingo.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. When you came on the course with me, Sean, a lot of the courses is teaching people about connector runs. So, anybody knows that, well, obviously they don't, but the main run coming out of a hedge is the best place to trap. I teach people connector runs for the simple fact is if you go in a field and there's, 1,000 molehills and the runs come all the way back to the hedge, it's just molehills everywhere. So that's why we target the connector runs out in the field.
So it's an element of being able to see the wood for the trees, metaphorically.
Yeah.
About
yeah.
Neil's made a really good point there that I don't know if you guys can see at the bottom, which it says, how much does it matter if the moles can see the light where the trap breaks the surface? If you haven't correctly put the sod back again, or if you're using a trap, like a scissor trap, for example, that naturally breaks to the surface, how much of an impact does that make, do you think?
Well, they normally fill it. If I get rain washing down the part of the trap and you're getting air and light in there, it's like if you open a mole run and leave it open, the mole will fill it with soil. And this is what I tell people with Telpex as well. They tell me that the mole's not running that run. Well, if you was to get the Telpex and run your finger down between the trigger and the bottom of the trap, you'll feel a run through the soil where he's actually gone underneath your trigger.
So that's pretty impressive, actually, because I've set the Telpex before, and you can set them to a hair trigger. So for an animal to be able to touch that and not set it off, and then be able to dig around it, is pretty mad, actually. That shows quite a level of dexterity and what's the word I'm looking for? Like delicacy in an animal that shoots through a tunnel at near, superluminal speeds. They don't hang about, do they?
No. But Sean did a video a long time ago, which was really interesting, and I did try it, and it worked. Obviously, me and Matthew are in this game massively. Matthew don't bother with any other traps; he only uses tunnel traps. I like to try with other things.
Why don't you use Telpex traps, Matthew?
We all know why we don't use Telpex.
I was about to say, Matthew, just so everyone can hear this story nice and clearly, I'm just going to mute everyone else apart from Matthew, because I believe he has a cautionary tale for our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sean. So, well, I'll go into it. I only use tunnel traps. I don't mess around with other stuff. But back at the start, I was running a demolition site. I was doing a job in between, and on my dinner, I zipped around the corner. Thought I'll check the traps. Jumped on the farmer's quad. Went round there. He had 2 taplex in the back, so I thought I'll try one of them. Rushing, I get down on my knees now, cleared out the tunnel, grab a taplex, put it on my thigh, push it down, go to engage the trigger. It slipped off my waterproofs and got me right on the end of the helmet Optimus. It was black for a week.
I'm sorry, and just to sort of backtrack a little bit, it caught you on what? What was the exact terminology you referred to? So I think we need to add that to the pest manager's dictionary. Oh, you've managed to mute yourself.
Go on,
I'll
Matthew.
tell
Where
you.
did it come to? What did you describe it as?
He has conveniently lost internet signal now. I think the exact word he used, and people, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, was the helmetophilus, which I think is, it at one point it was a dinosaur discovered on the Jurassic Coast. That must be it, absolutely. But no, that's fantastic. So, guys, if you're listening, the thigh is not a good place to brace yourself to set traps. And out of all of them, so
Sorry, Alan, I interrupted. You were talking about something you tried that I'd done. That was really good.
Yeah, Sean was to, hang on, I'll show you where you set a Talpex properly. So, if you're in this game a long time, your hands get strong. So, Sean in the tunnel had buried the jaws down to the top of the trigger. So, obviously, the mole's come along now and hit the trigger. The first thing he's going to do is dig underneath the trigger. And I tried it and it works. It did work well, to be fair. So, Sean, that's come up for you. Congrats, mate. All these little tips and tricks is something that, I mean, Matthew would laugh at you and walk away, but I really am interested in things like this. And there's loads of lads have been on my course. The lads are probably watching now that have been on the course, and they do different things that I'm really interested in, because obviously I could learn little tricks and tips from them as well, even though I do this as a massive game myself.
I have to. I thoroughly agree with you there. I do a lot of training, and one of the things I enjoy most about the training is you will set a scenario, you set something up. You'll say like, right, here is this thing here, and from everything we've spoken about today, how would you tackle this situation? And of course, everyone has a different philosophy, and some of them are a absolute blinding glimpse of the terrifying insight as to the mind of an idiot. But sometimes people get a real sort of like, they say something and it makes you just hold up, stop sharp, doesn't it? You're like, actually, I've never considered that before. That's inspired, and how have I been doing this so long without ever having thought of that myself? So yeah, I think one of the biggest things about training is learning, isn't it, yourself?
Yeah.
What's the number one reason that people get a backfill?
Not bedding the trap properly.
Yeah.
And using cheap. Go on, Matt.
Go on, take it in turns. Go on, Alan. What's your ideas for number one reason people get a backfill?
I think the number one reason it's backfilled is not bedding the trap right. And if you're buying cheap eBay traps that are just not capable of doing the job. So the triggers are too stiff, they're floppy, there's too much play in the trap. So that's why I only deal with one company with my traps. I've used them over and over again for years, and I've never had a problem with them.
I mean, but before we bounce over to Matt, you make a really interesting point about the cheap traps, because a lady called Sandra Baker, who many of us have heard of, wrote a paper on the efficacy of snap traps for rats and mice predominantly, but she also included moles in there as well. And all of the traps that she bought, she didn't buy from suppliers like the pest control suppliers or the agricultural suppliers. She bought them off eBay and Amazon, and the quality of the traps, the mole traps specifically, they found on eBay and Amazon were so poor that they wouldn't have had the force to actually have killed
No.
a vole or a shrew, let alone a mole or anything else. And so actually there was a real alarming trend in cheap traps being not just ineffective, but actually potentially sort of like very damaging to the animals, because it would have just mangled them if it had one.
It doesn't matter what it is. If it's a rat, whatever, everything's got the right. If you're going to kill it, it's got to be dealt with in the right way. There's one thing I'm really against is cruelty. It's like if I go on a rat job, I like to go up there with my air rifle and thermal imaging and try and deal with as much of a problem before I even think about baiting that problem or doing anything else. I just like to deal with things fast.
Yeah, and it's all about, I mean, I think that's what people misunderstand about our industry, isn't it? It's not necessarily kill it by any means necessary. It's kill it in the right way with the right tools at the right time. Now, before we bounce over to Matt, someone's brought up a really, and this is contentious because I get asked this all the time, and I'm sure you do as well, but how often do you check your traps?
Every day. I go every 24 hours, I'm checking them.
And to play devil's advocate here, how do you charge for that? So are you charging by the mole, or are you charging by the time spent?
Yeah, on farms I charge per mole. If I do gardens, then obviously I put a set fee on it then. So I charge £80 for a garden. So, in my eyes I undercharge myself, but I catch so many moles on what I do and on per mole, I make my living out of it that I'm happy with,
And at that point, the costs that you've set allow you to go back and check them daily at that point.
Yeah, well, every trap we put in the ground, if it hasn't caught the mole, that mole has hit the trap. And this is what I tell everybody on the course. Don't come on the course and worry about a trap being backfilled, because once I pull that trap out, 90% of the problem is the person that's been on the course is they're on a bend, or they just haven't bedded the trap right. It's too loose. So I teach them on a course, don't be worrying about what we're catching the next day. If you get backfills, we'll deal with it. So don't worry about that, But it's all, like say, 90% of the time, they're on a straight run one way, and then the run bends, and the mole's coming along at an angle, he's hitting the metal, he's filling the trap in.
Lovely stuff. So, I mean, just to bounce over to Matt quickly now, same two questions for you. What's the number one failure in catching a mole, and how often do you go and check them?
Again, I'd have to agree with everything that Alan said. Normally, it's bed in the trap. 90% of backfills are user error. So you've done something wrong. Whether you might let a bit of light in, the trap's not tight around the side. There's play in it. Alan hit the nail on the head there. And trap wise, if we're doing farms, we normally, when we get to the end of the farm, we run back around them that day, pull out what we've caught the same day. There might be 20, 30, and traps can go back in. I'm slightly different to Alan because we're up against it with other work as well. So I may trap a farm, say on a Monday, and I may not get back there then for a few days after.
Okay,
in an ideal world, we go background.
So what I'm hearing here is,
hang on a second. I've been with Alan on this course, and the one thing I would stipulate is, people say you've got to check these traps every day because it's like a humane thing, but you never find a live mole caught in a trap, do you? They're always dead. Like, you can catch them by the foot and they'll be dead. Unless they've set that trap off minutes before you get there, they're dead. Like, they're not lasting 12, 24, 36 hours alive. They die fast, don't they?
Yeah,
definitely.
But that's one of the main reasons why I don't know if you watch on my group, John, but I'm regular, putting the tunnel traps up and showing people how to tune that trap, because I don't want somebody going to somebody's garden and a mole being caught by the foot and pulling himself out of that garden by his foot. So the reason why they're being caught by the foot is because this trigger they're bending them too far forward. So what's happening is the mole's coming through and pushing the trigger, and its foot's just in there. And we had a big problem with a trap about 5 years ago. I did tell you about it, where a trap was designed and this spring that's on the top here was too long, so it was bringing this jaw in too close to the trigger, and it was catching the moles by the 2 front feet. So I had the tech team, I'm not going to mention the company, but I had the tech team come down and had a bit of an argument in the field. And there's people that are on the molding group that will remember that this little piece here, you got a pair of pliers and put a crimp in that, and it pulled the top of the loop, so it made the loop go straight again, which, you know, everybody had saved their traps. You know, people had bought 300-400 traps and they were back into using them, all because of that silly mistake. You know, and I think it's people like me that, you know, is interested in the welfare of the mole, that I sat for days and days to figure out what the problem was.
Yeah, but the other thing I want to clarify as well is, because this is where I think in business people will go wrong. When you say you check them every day, what they don't realize is that everything will be dead the next day. And if there's any backfills, you will have caught that mole before you've left that site.
Yeah. Well, you've done it, Sean.
Yeah, exactly. He's not going in on Monday, checking them on Tuesday, going back on Wednesday, going back on Thursday. He goes at Monday, he pulls them Tuesday. Anything that's backfilled is dead Tuesday. They pick up the traps and they go. So these lads are that efficient. They'll spend 2 days and no more than 2 days clearing the site. So
yeah,
every 4 to 6 hours.
very quickly to go down the.
Yeah, I've had lads come on. I've had lads come out with me, and they've been messaging me telling me that the traps have been in the ground for 10 days, and a mole's not touched them. And well, I can automatically tell you that mole has filled that trap without setting the trigger off. So he's gone round and checked all his traps, and every trap that was in the ground was stuck for soil because of bad setting.
Yeah.
I mean,
you know, but me and Matthew went on a job a couple of years ago. He come and helped me, and we tracked this job. We was round it in 3/4 of a day. The next day we went round there and we pulled 79 moles out of the farm, and we never had a backfill. We caught everything with the first hit. You know, so
I've got a big question here, and it's something Matt alluded to earlier, which was, of course, if you look through the history of mole catching, it goes all the way back to the Romans and their clay pots, doesn't it? And we actually only really started to see, mechanical traps later in the 1800s. I think the doofus was the first mass-produced one, wasn't it, at that point?
Yeah.
But with that, we lost a lot of the art of mole trapping with the advent of strychnine and being able to put strychnine into moles, and that would decimate that population, and that would be a thing. Now, one of the things that Matt said is actually to get these very big populations takes maybe a year or two of that farmer just taking his eye off the ball and not. So when you clear a site, when you clear a farm, how often do you find yourself being called back up to go back out to do such a big riddance of moles on that site?
The following year.
The following year.
If there's a lot of moles in the area around the farm, you might get a few stragglers come in that obviously they're working the run and they've come back under the fence. So sometimes you can be called just before silage to clean, 8 or 9 moles out of that property again. But it's the full cycle. So once we go through summer, like Matthew said, I personally think that the moles come out the ground and live in all the reeds, leaf litter, hedges through the summer. So, and I've been watching it, like when you get your first frost and all the insects start dying is when the mole activity really starts taking off in the area here.
Okay. That's, and that's kind of exactly what you say, well, you were trying to get your headphones on earlier.
Yeah, but I that's what I think. I'm not going to sit and say I know every physic about how a mole works, and none of us do. And whoever sits there saying they do, they don't. We're not a mole,
Yes. We like to think it's
going back to your going back to your question. How often do you think you'll get called back and have big hits? Once you've had that big hit, that's it. Unless you leave the place alone for a couple of years, that's the end of it. I done a farm down here a few years ago now. It took me 2 or 3 days. I think we had 172 moles off there. He called me back the following year before silage, and I took 12 off there.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting a lot of.
And that's why
I
that's
imagine
why
that.
my when I said earlier that my mole work has swung around. The numbers are just not there. Then you can't just keep killing things and expect them to just bounce back like they were. The numbers are just not there, and the money's really not in it unless you've got lots of moles around you. You can be the best mole catcher in the world if you've got no moles in the field. What's the point?
So what you're basically saying is you've become a victim of your own success. You have been,
Yeah.
you have transcended regular mole catcher to become, the Ubermensch, and now you have to have divested into other realms of pest control because you simply have killed all the moles.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's like I keep getting told. I got told off by Wayne Walton, who made a DVD on, and he sells it through 14 Acres. And he was telling me, obviously I've got a job to do in clear moles, where Wayne's saying you're going too far into the season, in the breeding season, so you're killing all your next year's moles. But I'm one of them persons who liked to do a job and do the job properly, because there's more farms every year that come in, but obviously, like Matthew said, the numbers can't keep up with us.
So that's I mean that's a fascinating sort of like take. We always assume there's always going to be pests, but from the sounds of things, you can become too effective, and I imagine that's a real issue when you are a paper mole like mole catcher. If you're charging by the hour, then it doesn't really matter. Now there's one question here that I'm going to bring up in a second, but I've got another one, which is, how do you guys mark your mole? Especially when you've got that really specialized turf cutter you've got there, the holes that you are leaving are going to be nigh on invisible, aren't they? So
Yeah.
how do you mark your cuts? How do you mark your traps?
These. They're a plastic marker sold by UK Potash Supplies.
Okay.
So the reason we use them, one, they're bright. It doesn't matter if they go through the machine because they're plastic. So when they do silage and the sheep pull them out, the sheep always chew the tops of them. So this is the reason why I use them, because they're so bright and they're plastic. So if you I was putting a message on earlier, if you're using wire with flags on, the sheep always pull the flags off the top, so you've got wires sticking in the field. So if you lose your trap, well, that's going to get shredded up and go into the silage with the mowers.
That's a really good point, actually, because of course the only thing that makes the flag visible, especially because you can buy them, off eBay for marking everything from electrical lines up to the rest of it. But if that flag goes, it's you got more luck of trying to find a tent peg, haven't you?
Yeah. But we always work the trap as well. The trap and marker are together.
Okay.
So you pull to the job, your marker's in the ground, you're setting your trap, it's in, you're on to the next one.
I mean, I'm absolutely in awe of the military precision this sounds. You'd think that we were, going to war, right? I suppose it is in a way, isn't it?
But it's also setting a trap, I mean, Matthew and me use the same technique. I watch people pushing the trigger down and they're trying to fold this over and twingle and twangle. I mean, we just flick the trigger over and you set it with your finger, it's done, look. So it's that sort of speed. Everything is speed. So if we're doubling up, it's the same the other side. Set it with your finger, it's done.
This is the same level of awe I'm experiencing right now, which is comparable to the first time I saw my friend Guy roll a cigarette with one hand. I mean, what even was that? Come on, who's got a stopwatch?
Matthew does them behind his back.
Can you?
I used to be.
Can you set that behind your back?
Matthew can set them behind his back.
Right, I've got a challenge for you, Matthew. Have you got a half barrel there? Have you got a doofus? Have you got one to hand?
I'll have a look. Let me see. I doubt it.
Sorry, Matt.
What do you mean?
The thing is,
what do you mean you doubt it?
I can't impress this enough on anybody watching. What you are listening to here, to see it in action, is the next level. And the one thing I would say to any pest controllers who are thinking about going on it, and I don't know if Alan will know this, I don't know how much trapping of other things he's done, Matthew might, but if you go, the basics that they will teach you in mole trapping are the same basics for setting snares, for setting vent traps, everything. The basics are the basics are the basics, and if you can catch moles at them numbers very quickly, you can catch anything in a trap. Because remember, you are setting a trap with no bait.
Right.
Go on, behind your back, Matthew. Go on.
So Matthew behind your back, and then I'm going to time. We'll get the little timer up here if we can see it. Yeah, there we go. And we're going to see how quickly Alan can set a mole trap here.
Oh, marvelous!
I reckon it's, from watching you do it there, it's at least, it's got to be under.
Yeah.
Oh, Christ on a bike.
Done.
Done and done. Right, your challenge now, Alan. Unset your trap.
Can I? Yeah, it's unset.
Unset. So shout done when you're done. I'll count you in. 3, 2, 1, go.
There you go.
Right.
5
I think that
seconds.
was me being a little bit slow, but under 6 seconds, I reckon that is, or 6 seconds.
Do you want to go again?
Do I want to go again? Was that?
Yeah, because you pressed it a bit late there.
Oh right, okay. Right, you want to give it one more go? Okay, shall we see?
This is sitting down this time.
This is
right. It's unset, yeah.
Unset. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay.
Oh, you shaved half a second off it. Which, to be fair, you're probably right. That was probably more my fat hands than anything else.
Yeah.
Anyone, a lot of people in the comments now, just let them race. Let them race. So that's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it just shows the absolute skill and levels involved with that. So yeah. Yeah.
Can I quickly jump this one, because this is important for pest controllers? Opinions on hanging moles on wire for farmers to see, etc. Where did it come from? Why do people do it? Do you do it? Do you not? Pros and cons.
They say they do it because they're showing the neighbours that the neighbours asking about who's caught your moles, but I totally against it. I don't hang no moles on no fences. All my moles go in the back of my quad. I go to the farm and I get paid for what I've caught, and they deal with the moles once I finish with them.
And make themselves a nice top.
Again, it goes back to the old days when there was no telephones and no Facebook. So the mole catcher would hang them up on the fence to show everyone else that he's in the area, and then they get in touch with him, and his work could move on from farm to farm. That's where it all stems from. I
mean, and that's a very interesting point, actually, because someone made a comment earlier, and I've just found it, Sean. There we go. Other than word of mouth, how do you then market being a mole catcher?
Well, all mine was word of mouth. I get little things on Facebook. People tag me in a hell of a lot of work in the area, but word of mouth for me flew round. Because when I started after Matthew had showed me, the true side of what we could do, I went and did a full farm for 90 quid. I said, I'll do the lot for 90 quid because I was so interested in doing the moles. The farmer had it done for peanuts. And then the following one, that's when I started on £5 a mole. I kept my numbers really cheap to get my name out there. Once I did 2 or 3 farms at that money, my name flew out. So I told every farmer I'll do it for £5 a mole this year. Next year, it's £8 a mole. And they all contacted me.
I mean, so that's interesting, because I was about to say there's a real chronic issue in our industry of undervaluing ourselves, and it's very difficult to push a price up after you've set it. If you say it's £5 and you say I'm gonna go up to 10, people instantly kind of like kick off. But what you've done there is a really interesting psychological quirk, which I tell people, which is you don't say it's £5, you say it's £8. But for this first year, it's an introductory price of £5. So actually, people know what the price is, and they think they're getting a deal. But when you put the price up, it's not the fact that you're putting the price up; you're just basically putting the price back to what it was. And people can rationalize that so much better. They're like, oh well, I got a year of it cheap, and now it's just back onto sort of like normality.
The same with with Matthew, I mean, I've had a lot of farmers here. I've seen the fields absolutely riddled in moles, and that they won't contact me because they don't think that we can compete against Strychnine. So they used to have the Strychnine men in there, you know, for all the years they had them in. Well, every job I've ever gone and done, what was done with Strychnine, they've all told me there's no difference between Strychnine and what you're doing without putting poisons in the ground.
I mean, that is the difference, though, isn't it?
This is a very important question here, then. What's the value to the farmer?
Well, I think it's a lot more than what we're doing, because the amount of work that me and Matthew are putting into a job through a season on the jobs. I mean, Matthew comes and helps me because I probably cover 60 farms up here plus, you know, and it's a lot of ground. The smallest farm I do is probably, you know, 200, 300 acres.
No, you're missing it. What I'm trying to say is,
Yeah.
that no
So
farmer
I'll
is
answer
going
that,
to.
John.
Yeah.
It comes down to soil. If it's in their silage fields, if they get soil in there, there's a bacteria called listeria, which can be fatal to the sheep and whatever else that comes through. So that's one of the biggest factors for farmers.
So what you're saying?
Yeah,
is
I can't hear you, Sean.
Yeah. So
there's only one.
Sorry.
Go on, mate. Sorry.
The molehills get combined into the silage. They disturb a natural bacteria, listeria, which is then the sheep pick up. They get listeriosis and the sheep die.
On the machines with the mowers, flicking stones everywhere and damaging blades, and it's just a big problem. It's a big problem, and the farmer can keep rolling, knocking them humps down, chain harrowing, rolling. Within 2 or 3 weeks, it's going to be back to normal. That mole's going to clean every tunnel out and push all the soil back out the holes.
It's amazing what they do push out of those molehills, because my dad, for years and years, every time we went on a walk, would regularly kick the top off molehills. I was like, why are you doing that? And he's like, you'll be amazed. And where we live, it's was a whole lot of Roundhead versus Cavaliers engagements, and so the fields are littered with things like musket balls and bits of lead, and the amount of musket balls and coins and just weirdness that moles push to the surface is unreal. So, I mean, with that, I have to ask, what is the weirdest thing that you found kicked out of a molehill? Because there must have been something.
Well, I found eggs in molehills, but obviously it's not the mole that's pushing the eggs out. It's the birds are burying or foxes putting them in there, you know. But I've not found anything strange like that. I think the moles are quite particular what they push out and what they want to keep.
Oh no, they obviously like to keep gold bullion because I haven't found any of that. But yeah.
I don't know what Matt's found.
I've found all sorts of stuff from them, from golf balls to ear tags from cattle. I found frogs in there. I found newts in there. There's a long list of stuff that I found in a mole dump. The most common one is fox droppings, though.
Yeah, that's on every job I do. Really? I'm sure the fox loves them.
Yeah. Why is the 2 styles of funnel trap flat and round?
What's the what, Sean? I can't hear.
Why are there 2 styles of tunnel traps, round bottom and flat bottom?
Well, this trap you can see here is basically the flat bottom trap, which was designed. I took 2 different traps apart and built this, which then went into production. So as you can see, it's a round bottom. So a lot of people like flat bottom. A lot of people like round bottom. I personally prefer a flat bottom trap because it sits on the bottom of the run. But you know, this was done for people that wasn't buying the flat bottom because they like round bottom trap. So, you know, UK Patang Supplies went ahead and got it put into production. But I don't find any different whether I use these or a flat bottom trap. They do the same job.
I suppose it all comes down to, at the end of the day, making sure that the bottom of that trigger, that noose, sits low enough to the ground to not get caught up in it, but not so far that not so high that the animal goes around it or underneath it.
Yeah. I bed these. The knot that's there is bedded under the ground for me anyway. It's submerged in the soil. That is.
So there we go. So why do you prefer the flat bottoms then?
Well, they both work as good. I think it's because when we came from flat pack years ago, I mean, Matthew will argue the same question. The first flat pack trap that they designed, the steel barrel trap, not stainless, the normal body that you use, was by far the best trap on the market. And they stopped it in production. So when they stopped that trap, it finished me with using that trap totally.
Oh, right. Well, that's all things. We end up getting so many excellent traps and excellent bits of kit and being removed.
Yeah. Yeah, everything gets changed, But like I say, they're a good, solid quality trap, and they catch moles. They do the job we need them to do,
So this I'll let Sean take this one.
Yeah. So we've seen funny things pulled up, but what else have you pulled out of a mole trap? Weasels.
I've had weasels, I've had moles. I hope I catch moles. I've had I caught a rat. I've had a dirty rat in there. I've had impotangs. I've had plenty of voles going through. So there's all sorts of use and tunnels. It's not just the mole. And as you know yourself, you go and do a garden, you kill the mole in a garden. Within a couple of weeks, the voles have totally took over it. There's little vole holes all the way down them runs, So the mole is doing great for nature as well. There's so much breeding going on them using that mole run.
It's like an apartment complex, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So, I mean, here we go. We've been talking, around it, but there's a lot of guys, a lot of people tonight who have come on to have a listen to you two. What would be, and a lot of people listening are going to be not, thinking about getting into mole trapping, having not, necessarily done it. So, if you could both give us just one bit of advice to the complete newbie, to the greenhorns out there that want to do this, but are yet to take the plunge, what would be the one bit of advice, one bit of practical advice that you could give them? And we go to Alan first.
Yeah, I personally, I tell everybody, I told Sean, do not take too much on. And knee pads, wear knee pads all the time, because my left knee is totally shot through not wearing knee pads. I can hardly walk on it some days, but everyone that comes on the course, they're all screaming for work, advertise, but then it gets to the stage where you can't sleep at night because you're constantly thinking about what job you're doing next, how you're going to all get them done. It's a seasonal job. Once I start getting to May, June, it starts thinning out, the moles are disappearing again, so you've got to try and get everything sorted out before that grass grows.
Surely that's when you do the wasps, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, it's nice working on the moles in the summer, though, instead of us coming home soaked to the skin every day.
Oh, perfect. So your big bit of advice would be moderate in what you think you can achieve, and wear knee pads.
And don't undercharge. Don't undercharge yourself. You're worth what you think you're worth is what you need to go in. I mean, I know lads that charge setup fees, they charge mileage. I do what I do because I keep my customers happy and I enjoy what I do, and the price that I charge, I earn money. So
it is economies of scale, I suppose, that you're working with at that point.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that. So, Matt, go on. We've given you a bit of time to think about this now. Go on. What would be your golden bit of advice?
Alan's touched on it. I was going to say, just don't undersell yourself. Just work out what you need to be, where you need to be at, and at the end of the day, you're trying to run a business, not a charity. So you need to be making money.
Yeah.
It cost me. Well, I'm with Cleverton's Insurance, and it's cost me a lot more because I'm doing the mole courses. Obviously, I've got to have insurance for people coming on, liability insurance and stuff. And my insurance is over doubled because of doing mole courses. So it's not helped me in any way.
Well, there we go. I mean, so that's it. Do you guys? So we've prices come up a lot. And sorry, Sean, I've been absolutely dominating chatting tonight, but I'm finding this absolutely fascinating. But when you do you have a formula in your head for when you price up a job? I mean, you're saying price per mole, but for when you're doing job work, do you look and say, right, that's going to be so many pence per square meter, and I'm going to come back twice, so times it by 2? Is there a formula, or is it just all in your gut? Do you look at that and you say,
It's coming to that. It's honest to God, Lex, it's coming to that. It's getting to the stage now where, like Matthew said, the numbers have dropped off so much. I'm going to be talking to farmers about charging per acre. So whether there's a mole in it or not, if I'm traveling that acre, I want paying for it, you know? If there's 20 moles in it, there's 20 moles in that 1 acre and nothing all the rest of the farm, I want paying per acre, because we can't, on the scale we're catching moles, we can't keep going at this rate.
yeah, okay, so that's a really good bit for people to keep in mind when they are doing this, which is, you know, if you do go down the route of price per mole, make sure there are some moles there first. Otherwise, you're going to be spending all day.
Well, I think me and Matthew did a job a few years ago now, and we had another lad with us that was going around the traps after we set up the job because we was running out of traps on the job, and we pulled 70 odd moles the same day off that job. So before we'd finished trapping, there was 70 odd moles in the trailer ready to go up to the farm, and the farmer was asking us questions where they come from. You know, that's the sort of speed we was pulling them out of the ground.
I suppose the one redeeming feature is moles go, for those who haven't caught moles before, and I'm sure you guys will back me up, how quickly does a mole go from fresh to absolutely rancid?
Oh, it's stinking fast. A couple of days, they're ponging, especially if it's warm.
You wouldn't want to be driving around with a truckload of those in the back, you know, just on the off chance you wanted to pull the wool over a farmer's eyes, would you?
No. Well, I've got 11 white moles. There's 11 white moles in my freezer by me here. And I've actually finished work to get them moles home and backpacked in the freezer before they go off.
So it's quite funny, I'll know like this. I can remember we went round the first couple of fields when I went down, done the course. And I was like, going to jump on the quad and sod off. He said, you'll have caught moles by now. I said, fuck off. And he said,
yeah, I remember you.
Eat that fucking molehill if we haven't caught moles. And I was like, pass me the quad, I'm going to watch a man eat a molehill. I think I got to the second tap and I was like, dead mole. I think we caught like 12 before we left off 3 fields.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
So this is when you see people on Facebook or whatever, and they are giving you advice or they're telling you stuff, once you've done that course and you've been with someone like these lads, you will see through who can catch moles and who can't. Do you agree with that, lad?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. But the same with you, Sean. You know, on the scale me and Matthew go at it, you know, I put mole traps in the ground through a molehill quicker than what you was doing with a shovel and a spade. You know, by brushing that molehill off, putting my fingers down, ripping it up, setting the trap. I do it with every lad that comes on the course just to show how fast we're dealing with the moles.
Yeah. I've got a question for Matthew, actually.
Yeah.
If all you use is barrel traps, when you go to a garden job and you have literally got like a small section of a feeding ground to go at, how do you manage to deal with that? Because if I tried to trap that with a barrel trap, I wouldn't get the job done.
No, I've never, in all the years I've done it, I've never ever come across a mole that I can't catch with a barrel trap. No matter where it is, there's always a way of getting it in. And sometimes you just have to
I can't. That mole I couldn't catch on reams.
Sometimes it's not, and you just have to be a bit creative on where they go. Sometimes they've had them on patio slabs and they're running just underneath the patio slabs, and you've had to turn the trap on its side and set it on its side, but then still catch them all. So there's ways to do everything. Like I said, it's not rocket science, and there's no right way and there's no wrong way. You touched on it before in your podcast. There's 10 different ways to do one job, and everybody has a different way. That's just the way I find it works for me, and that's what I've always stuck to.
You say there's no, there's no right way, wrong way. I mean, I'd agree that there's no right way. There are definitely wrong ways. I mean, setting a barrel trap upside down, eating a mole out of the floor is probably in that category, or catching a testicle. Oh, sorry, what was it? Not a testicle.
Yes, Matthew.
No, what did you say? Go on, say it again.
But to be fair,
It all
You've
cut
been-
off. I couldn't hear you. Someone tried ringing me and my phone went off, so I couldn't hear any of the conversation after, so I didn't get any of
You
it.
don't
But,
want to.
yeah, caught me right on the end of it, and it went black for a week and swelled up. That was the only plus side.
Yeah. But we
That's
go
just
on jobs
making-
as well, and I've noticed, like, when Matthew comes up trapping, like, I put my trap in dead flat and straight in the run. Well, all the time, Matthew's traps are always on an angle. And it's so strange how he puts the trap in at an angle. That's how I know what's his and what's mine.
He puts them in on the
Don't
piss,
ask
does
me
he?
why.
Is that intentional, or is that just because you got one arm
I
longer
think
than
it's
the other?
just habit. Habit.
It just, yeah, it just happens.
Yeah. But I had a mole. I did have a mole on a farm by me that I couldn't catch. I couldn't catch him. I put a tunnel trap in. I put a Talpex in. I put a patang in, because a lot of people just put patangs in flat down. I mean, you could use the patang sideways as well. So if you got a tricky mole, you could put them in sideways. Eddie Jones started doing it with me, and I didn't think it'd work, but to be fair, it works really well. And I'd done everything trying to catch this mole, and Show Off over there came up with his standard tunnel trap and caught them all and made me look a right idiot.
Well, it's what I keep telling everyone. I taught him everything he knows, not everything I know. So
It just sounds like it's a bit of a cyclical whirlpool going on there. But I do think, sorry.
Sorry, two questions here. One from Matthew to Alan. If you're watching Alan now, you know he's going to run out of moles, etc. You've been down that path. What advice would you give to Alan now about bit like from business? Because I know he's starting to go that way. So what would you say?
yeah, well, we've been talking. We speak every week anyway, and Alan's trying to build up his pest control business now. He's looking at doing his qualifications and everything, and he's constantly on the phone to me. He's constantly on the phone to Bill from Bridgend Pest, and we're giving him as sound advice as we can. But I've always said to him from day one, "You're too cheap. You're too cheap. You're too cheap." When he was doing £5 a mole, I was like, "The moles are not going to be there forever. You have to get the money while it's there." And Alan's work ethic is higher than anybody else, and I know he'll get out there and he'll do the job and he'll do it properly, but he needs to have a system where he knows his worth, he knows how much he needs to earn, he knows what is his true cost of his business, and going forward there's plenty of scope there for him. There's plenty of scope.
Then the next question: I was always taught that the apprentice will always become the master. Who's the master out of you two now?
Well, I've always said from day one, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Like I say, Matthew got me into this game. You know, if we go in the field, we don't really catch more than each other. I'd say we're on par, but obviously he's my master and he taught me everything I know on the game. So I've got to sit and agree that he's the man.
I'm rusty now. I'm rusty.
Yeah, and I love him to bits, Sean. He's like my brother. I love him more than anything. So,
that's really heartwarming.
Yeah.
We need to absolutely have more of.
He's been really good to me in my life. Like say, if he's got a problem, I'll go and help him. If I've got a problem, he's at my door. You know, even down to if the dog dies. You know, when you're upset, he's there. So that's all I can say about him.
It's supposed to be hard.
I say that you'll be pleased to know that the votes are coming in at the moment. You're still neck and neck, but we'll see how it pans out over the course of the next little bit. But no, we made a bit of a promise at the beginning of the year that we were going to try and keep our podcasts to a little bit under an hour and a half. So I am going to basically say we've got our final three questions for you now, and I'll let Sean ask the first one, and then I'll jump in with the last couple.
So, first one is: which three people would you two like to see on this podcast? Alan first.
On the podcast,
Mm.
well, obviously, I'm a molding man, so I would like to see Wayne Walton on the podcast, because again, I bought his DVD when I was really in the start of it all, and I think he's not just interested in mole catching, he's interested in all different things. So trapping, he's a bit of a genius in my eyes. You know, I'd never met him, but he's like the best friend that you've never met. It's weird how to explain about him, you know. So I would personally like to see Wayne Walton on.
Go on then,
Excellent.
Matthew. Who would you pick?
So first one, I'd like to see Davey back on again. He was a great podcast the other day. So Davey would be a good one. Alistair from Killgerm, the bird expert. I think he'd be a good one to get on and do some bird work. And I think we need to see someone from CRRU. Someone needs to come on and answer some questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure lots of us in the past.
Yeah.
Lots of questions for someone from the CRRU.
Well, it's funny you say that, because we've been talking about this all week, and I was saying there's clearly a disconnect now between crew and professional users, and it seems like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And from my point of view, Lex will probably disagree with us, but from my point of view, it feels like to a degree they're pissing up the back and telling where it's raining. To a degree, I understand they've got a hard job to do, but I honestly believe that they should come on and explain like what's going on, because maybe that will clear up the problems that we're having and why they're getting so much pushback from the industry. So I think that's a great shout, that one. I think Alistair's a great shout, and Wayne Walton would be a great shout, although I think he just had a point blank refusal, Alan, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
And then have you enjoyed it? Has it been bad?
Yeah, it hasn't been as bad as I thought it was. I'm dreading it, to be honest. I hate speaking publicly, and it's just not me. That's why Alan does them all courses, and I just kick on and get on with things. But no, it hasn't been too bad. I've enjoyed it. So thank you very much for having me, guys.
Oh, perfect.
And I don't know how many people are on this podcast that's interested in mole, Sean, but obviously there's a lot of people that are not on the molding group that I run. So I don't know if you could tag my molding group in for people to get tips and tricks.
So the last question was, give us a shameless plug. So we've got the AA Mold Control Facebook page. Give it a like and share. Give it a go and then introduce yourself to the group, and you'll meet lots of people from all over. Matthew, and your course, of course. If you actually want to learn how to catch molds, give Alan a ring, because you're not going to get any better. And Matthew, what would your shameless plug be?
I haven't really got one. Alan's going to be my shameless plug, and get on the course with him and learn how to catch molds.
No. I tell you what. So imagine some of your customers were watching this. Tell us what Dalton Pest Control do well.
Everything, obviously. No, yeah, we definitely pride ourselves in giving our little family touch. I mean, it all started off with just me. I didn't come from any background from Rent to Kill or whatever. You know, I pretty much went on Killgerm and done a few courses, and I've learned everything myself as I've gone along. I've had a couple of people who've helped me out along the way. But yeah, we've grown to where we've got staff now, and like I say, 85 plus contracts. So we're definitely doing something right. We've never lost one because we've done a bad job. So yeah, that's it really.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's perfect.
So contract work in the what area? Cardiff.
In the Cardiff and South Wales, yeah.
And you're North Wales. Alan? Are you
I'm West Wales. West Wales, I am, mate. But also as well, Sean, I just want to say quick before you all head off on here, that if anybody is interested in doing the mole catching courses, that's why I only have 2 people at a time on it, because obviously I've got to put all my attention into them 2 people. If I wanted to make a lot of money, I could have 20 people on the course, do a talk, show you how to put traps in. It's not about that. It's about going to work and showing what them 2 people are capable of doing in a day.
Yeah,
so absolutely. I can put all my...
Alan, I'm going to give you a shameless plug, and it's the same as Matt's. I'm not just saying this because he's come on the podcast tonight. If you are interested in trapping, whether it's moles, rats, rabbits, snaring, bent traps, whatever, learning to catch moles will absolutely teach you the basics. And doing it, these guys do it. It will teach you the basics so fast, because you're not going to put 2 traps in the floor, 3 traps in the floor. You're going to put 100 traps in the floor. Like that's the number. He's not slowing down for you. You're going at that speed. So you're going to do it repetitively over and over again. It isn't a course. You're going to work for the day, but at the end of it, your learning will be astronomically higher. You missed that bit, Matthew, earlier. Would you agree with that? That the basics of catching moles is the same basics of snaring, of fen traps, of blah, blah, blah. It's positioning, getting it right, and you can learn.
Yeah, it's just general fieldcraft. And like you say, you apply it to while you're setting traps for foxes, or you're setting fen traps or snares. It's all the same basics. Yeah, you have to read that run, read where you're putting the trap, and read the animal. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Should come out with us for a day, Matthew.
Say again.
I think Lex should come and have a day out with us.
I think I should.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
I've
think
been already invited to go shoot things with Stuart up in Scotland. If you want to take me out to Wales to go and catch, yeah.
If you want to come out for a day with me, I will tell you live on here now. You're more than welcome.
And I'll
Let's
make
do
the
it.
trip up
We'll do a documentary from the field. But I imagine it's just going to be me hanging off the back of a quad bike, my hair flapping about in the breeze, screaming like a child.
I won't let you video though, because I have to do courses and people will learn everything off the video then, wouldn't they?
It would just be a selfie of my face just screaming, bouncing along on a truck. I think people would pay to see that, if nothing else. No,
if you ever want to come and have a day out, you're more than welcome.
I absolutely, I went to university in Wales. Wales has a very special place in my heart. So if any excuse for a day out in Wales or two, I'm going to be all over that. So absolutely, yes. We'll meet up after this and we'll have a definite catch up and a chat.
Brilliant.
And you can show me how it's done, or anything else.
Yeah.
Right. Is there anything more? Does anyone want to see any more? Any more for any more?
I think we covered it all, haven't we?
Tell Phil Van Deer what's me. Tell Phil Van Deer what's me and Matthew love him. We're thinking about him on here.
Oh, that's good. There was one comment sent in just before the show started, and we'll end on that. It was something about donkeys. Does that ring any bells with anyone? What do you feed your donkeys? Can anyone remember what it was?
Feed your donkeys?
It said, ask Matthew.
What do you feed your donkeys, Matt?
Who put the question up?
What do you feed your donkey?
No, it said, what does a donkey get for its dinner or something? Or donkey on a beach or something it was.
Shawnee, you read that right, mate?
No.
What does the donkey from Barry Island get for dinner? 30 minutes,
That's
the same
it.
as the ones on Western. Yeah.
Right.
This is, I think, the most extravagant lead up to a joke going, wasn't it?
Barry Island, I don't know, yeah. Right, we're going to give it a go. Thank you very much. And let's see if we can get the exit right, Lex. After 3, catch you all later. And thank you very much for your time, boys. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.